Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is basically me doing some watering. I've got a thumping headache today, so I don't want to be too long out here. And I have to do my mounts. I should do the pots as well, but that's just going to make my headache worse being here too long. So we'll have a go at what I'll do is as I water each mount, you'll have to put up with the clanging in the bowl. That's how it is. And we'll just have the fastest of looks at each of the mounts. Now I won't get through all the mounts, that'll take too long, but we'll see how we go. We might do, depends how much I say. This will be the first full-length video that I'll do with the new processing settings, so HD basically, you know, much higher quality. I doubt if it'll make any difference to the sound, and most people are probably not listening through anything other than a speaker about that big on their phone, which makes no difference at all. And if you view on a very small screen, you're not going to see any difference. It will make no difference to you. But those that view on large, you know, screens that have got the capability of, you know, reproducing that level of quality, maybe they'll see a difference. You know, people that watch on their great big, you know, widescreen TVs sort of thing should see a difference. And for me, it makes hardly any difference. Basically, I just basically followed a YouTube guideline. You know, if you want to know how to do something, there's a YouTube video. There's even a YouTube video to look up how to do it, YouTube videos. But anyway, it just basically gave quite specific instructions for the software that I use. It's perfectly logical, really. It's just basically making everything the same so that there's little or no work for YouTube to do, which means things will load faster and shouldn't get messed about with so much. So it was just a matter of looking at the properties and then into the details of one of my videos, and then taking the various settings off of that, because that's what the camera produces, and matching them up to the software so that there's no conflicts or anything and everything's nice and smooth. And that, you know, the software then outputs in a format that YouTube likes, using the maximum settings that the camera can produce. So you can't go any higher than your camera. You can't add in what wasn't there in the first place. So we'll give that a go. The other day I played about with my Rhinantheras. The bonus, I was going to say, there's going to be a bit of camera moving around today, so those that get seasick, now's a good time to look away. I'm just going to point the camera down there for a minute. That's the old Vanda bucket down there. Now it's only got water in it at the moment. I haven't added any feed in yet. So today things will just get flushed in there with clean water, but they get hydrated, that's the beauty. And with the lava rock, we can now do that. Now that's half the plant in the bucket, but with my airflow in here, and these being up in the roof in line with the oscillating fan, the plant's not going to stay wet. Now in the winter, that could be a problem. But yeah, so I can now just drop those in there like that. Where's the third one? It's funny, when I did this one, I did say that leaf's not long for this world, didn't I? It's not going to stay there. And that takes me down to 4 plus the latest one maturing. But let's hope something happens with this now as a consequence of getting fully hydrated. The only thing I've got to watch is that the pots don't break roots down in the bucket where I'm not looking. So that's that done, and they'll just sit there and soak now. They can probably have half an hour or so. The idea is to fully hydrate those roots, which wasn't happening before. That just wasn't happening. Right, somewhere about there, I think. This headache's nearly bad enough that I took something for it, but not quite. But what I don't want to do is make it any worse. I want a relatively relaxing day. So the mounts are due a flush today, which makes life easy. And just pour some RO water in. Now somebody asked me, it was a while back now, when you're using your RO water, and it's at a pH of, well, around, well, in my case about 6.8, 6.9, just under 7, do you use pH down to take it into the accepted range for orchids, sort of 5.7 to 6.5? And the simple answer is no, I don't. The main reason is that where I'm going to use it today is on the mounts. The mounts have got, to a degree, moss on them. Moss is acidic, so as soon as I water one of those mounts, it's going to drop the pH. So anyway, I'm just going to do this lot today, and this is a pretty fast process. That's just, as I said, pick one up, water it, hang it up to the drip. This is one of the Twinkles, that's got new growths coming on. It's one of the pieces. Don't know which one, it hasn't got a label. This year when they bloom, we will get the colours sorted out. And I'll say now that to do these with a sprayer, firstly they wouldn't get that wet, and secondly, to get them that wet with a sprayer, most of the water would go on the floor, or worse still, on the electrics. That's why I don't use a sprayer very often. And then when they're done, they just hang up there to drip for a bit, not for long. This is a Alisara, autumn colours, I think it is. I've been struggling with this for years, but we've got good new growths now, so I'm hoping that at least one of those will bloom, just so that I can be reminded of the colours. It's an unusual set of colours on that one, like I have never seen on any others, which is the only reason I've struggled with it, quite honestly. Otherwise I wouldn't have bothered. Another little piece of Twinkle. Again, new growths pushing on quite nicely. Another little one up in there. So as long as I see new growths on a Twinkle, there will be new roots from those new growths, and there will be spikes. 1 or 2 per growth. I don't think I've had a Twinkle over the last, I've had Twinkles for a while now. I don't think I've ever had one that produced a new growth that didn't bloom. They just do. Now this is an unknown, came from Jeff's, no roots in a bad way, and it now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 pieces, 6 new growths. We'll get some blooms and then we'll find out what the hell it is. 7, there's another one on the end. All I know is that it's a type of Oncidium, an Oncidium Alliance type. But until we get some blooms, it could be Odontoglossum, although the leaves don't look quite right. The one thing I can safely say it isn't is Miltoniopsis. Not with those colour leaves. Another Twinkle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new growths on that piece, so should get a reasonable bit of blooming on that one. Now we're on to the stuff that used to live in a pot. This is, let me have a look at these two. Oh, I can't remember which way round they go. One of them is Sweet Sugar and one of them is the Shelob Tolkien. And until they bloom, I'm not actually fussed which way round they go. They're both mounted. This one's produced a new growth that's sort of matured. It tried to bloom and I stopped it. Yeah, so I took the spike off and it's just started a new growth. So it's coming on. I'd expect this new growth to be larger than the previous one because it's got roots now, whereas it didn't have very good roots before. And then this one, well, can't complain about the roots on that. The latest new growth is pushing on nicely. There's another new one just started there. I'm not sure that's going to progress properly because it's not moving. It's been like that a while, so that might not actually grow. But this one certainly is, and it has produced and is still producing roots. So this one's doing okay. That latest growth really does look like it's going to push a spike up as it starts to mature. And again, I'm getting a bit ruthless with plants now. If they've been struggling and they're starting to recover, and during that recovery process they try and bloom, I just stop them. I just don't let them do it. That's my little rare Dendrobium. The cane on that is pushing on nicely now, latest growth, so that's Phalaenopsis. I can never flipping say that. Little Chinese Dendrobium. Certainly not, I would say probably not very easy to acquire, as it wasn't discovered that long ago. I doubt if there's that many around, but a lot of people wouldn't have heard of that either. Let me come up to this bit up here, and this is my biggest Twinkle, which ironically is called Tiny Twinkle. I'm not counting the new growths on that. This one just grows very well for me. It's settled on its mount, it's got live moss, and it just keeps pushing out multiple new growths all over the plant. And most of those new growths, or quite a few of those new growths, will have 2 spikes. The rest will have 1, but there won't be any without spikes on, so that'll be a good show again in the autumn time. This is another plant from somebody else that is an oncidium type of some sort. It's growing new growths till we get blooms. I've got a clue what that is. I just like to see a plant progressing. You know, that's gone from having little to no roots to producing new growths with roots. So it's now a happy plant. It's pushing on nicely. So, you know, it now should do well. And we've got this Dendrobium. I can never remember this one. And the Cariniferum, I think it is. I think the blooms are going to go soon on this. Now this pushed up a new growth here, and I believe that's failed. But it's pushed another one up. Now, it would have been nice to have had both, wouldn't it? But I think that one's failed because the tip doesn't look right. I don't know whether I knocked it or something. But what it's now producing new roots. They're going down through the moss and coming out the end, which means they now hydrate quite well because most of those roots are buried in the moss, which gets very wet. Well, it's about to anyway. So that's coming on okay. If I just get one full-size new cane, I'll be happy with that. What I don't know with this one, because I haven't had it long enough, is does it manage to produce more blooms farther down the cane? Because all of these blooms have come straight out the apex. Literally straight out the top of the cane. Even on the older cane, straight out the top. So, be interesting to find out if it can push out buds lower down in subsequent years. This, take a good look, that's the last look. That was Dendrobium harveyanum. It tried to grow, failed its new growth, that's going out. It's had its chances. I hope I can get that again. That was a smashing plant once. And then this is the Mexicoa. New growth's pushing on nicely. So, you know, maybe we'll get a spike on one of those new growths. Having seen one of these actually in bloom at Burnham's, it was in a pot, but the pseudobulbs were around the same size as mine, so it's not like it has to be bigger to bloom. I think it's a sort of blooming size. Right, so that's that. Now we start up here, up in the air. That is Tortilli, 2 new growths pushing on nicely. Last year's growths will probably bloom in the late winter, early spring, but that's a guess because this has yet to bloom. So all I do with this is just, you know, keep it growing nicely, make sure the new growths are, ironically I'm going to say fed and watered well, as he says, flushing it with no feed at all. You have to bear in mind that this flush is not a true flush because I share water up to the point where it runs out and then I put some fresh in. which means where there's a large amount of moss on a mount, not like that one, that's one of my Orchis, but when there's a large amount of moss, there would be residual feed left in there from the last time it was fed. So when I pour that nice clean water all over it, it washes some of that out into my bowl, which then goes on the next plant, which means it's not getting clean water. But it doesn't build up much, I have tested it. So, and they have to lump it because I'm not using clean water for every single plant. I'd have to have the RO unit permanently on to have enough water to do that. So I'm just doing this little Master Valley on a mount over here because it lives under the shelf in the sort of, you know, out of the bright light, or the brightest light, and it gets forgotten frequently. It's the last one I ought to forget. This is another Orchis with the big long name. Can't remember it, and it hasn't got a tag. But it's growing nicely. I say it, I think there's at least 3 plants on that mount. That's how it arrived. It hasn't been touched. I mean, I left it on as it was when I got it. So it's mounted, but it's several plants. And then that's my last Orchis, that's fastuosa. That's coming on nicely. It's grown a lot of roots recently. They've gone down, attached, or gone in the moss, and it's produced a good sized new leaf recently, and another one's growing. So this one's coming on. It's possible that could bloom next year, but we shall have to wait and see. Orchis are vandaceous types, so monopodial, they just keep getting longer and longer. But quite a few of them push out little basal growths, so they can bush up. That's my glomeratum, sad little thing, but it has put some new shoots out because this actually got put on the dining room table to be thrown out and then decided to push out some shoots. It's the roots that are important on there, not the shoots. I think the old roots have failed, so the fact that it's pushing out some new ones, and it now has some growth with some green leaves on, it might get going again. But those new shoots they don't seem to have any strength in them. You know, they're not getting bigger at a rate. They're just ticking over. Not very good at all. That's my little mounted bulb of phyllum. Now, have we got spikes on here? Yes, we have. You're not going to see them, they're tiny. Seeing the spikes on this is about as bad as on Jenkins's eye. Well, what's the biggest one? You might be able to see that one. Just sticking out from the bulb, just there. Anyway, you'll see them when they bloom. Whoops, more water. And the dregs now. Ugh. So that's what I do. I pour some in, not a huge amount, and then I keep using it until it's too difficult to get in and use anymore, and then I add some more in. So it is shared. I don't worry about infections and spreading stuff with shared water. I've been doing it ever since I started growing, and I haven't noticed anything dramatic happening as a consequence. That doesn't mean to say it won't one day, and I still have to say that if you can avoid sharing water, then do so. Don't do it. This is my Kaneko. This is a Victoria Regina cross. Nice Dendrobium, this one. It's got new growths and kikis. So some of the new growths are coming out from the base, like here, yeah. But there are also some kikis starting, like here, part way up. And that's how it grows. It's always done that. There's lots of good canes on here from last year, and now we've got some more growing from this year. Those haven't bloomed yet because it tends to wait till they're leafless before it blooms. It is of that style, you know, the leafless canes bloom. So they grow on, and then usually through the end of the year and into the winter they drop some leaves on the canes and then possibly bloom the following year. But, it's just a type of cycle that a lot of those Dendrobiums work on. Ugh. Right, more water. Right, Right, now we're around to the stuff the other side. This is the Primulinum variety Laos, possibly. I'm not happy with the cane size on that plant. The trouble is, if it's not, and I've been sold something other than what I wanted, I'm not exactly going to be able to complain, because the guy was at Melbourne from the Far East, probably Thailand, so I can't exactly take it back, can I? If it's not what I think it is. We shall see, but the canes on that should be an awful lot longer. So we'll see what happens with this year's canes. Right, they're all along the top here are my Tolumnias. This is Bloody Bird. No, it's not a criticism of some feathery object outside. This is growing nicely. Quite a few new growths. Another new one starting at the base. These are the old seedling growths here. A mass of roots on this one. Very happy. I'll be happier when it decides to throw a spike out, which should be soon. The strength is there, you know, there's enough roots to back up any spikes that come out, and the growths are certainly large enough and strong enough. So it's just a matter of it reaching that point where it thinks it's okay to bloom. Another relatively new one, again growing well. New growth here, another new growth there. Good roots, coming on nicely. I think I've only got one disaster in the Tolumnias. Most of them are doing okay. I did have a lot more once, but the scale had them. So this one's coming on nicely, and its latest growth is massive in structure compared with the others. Much thicker, fleshier type growth, this one. And again, roots down onto the mount in the moss. All good stuff. And when it gets to the winter time and we get the lower night temperatures, I have to water my Tolumnias a bit more careful, because I have to keep the water off the plant, because they could well go into the night, you know, with wet down in the leaf crevices, which will cause rot. So another one growing well. This one has actually flowered on the latest growth, and behind that growth that flowered there is another new one coming up just down there. So that will be its next one. Under normal circumstances, if a Tolumnia is happy and it blooms, it should bloom on subsequent new growths without fail. Yeah? So if your culture's good enough that the plant's over the moon about where it lives, then once it blooms, it should bloom forevermore. This is my purple one. It spent a bit too long up in the light. Strangely enough, the latest growth coming up here is green, as I've actually taken it away. And that latest growth has another growth coming up there. And then there's another one in the middle of the plant as well. So this one's doing okay. It's doing okay. It's got a very old tired root system, this one. And it's recently been unmounted. Most of the roots were like, you know, shriveled and brown. But if you look at Tolumnias in the wild, that's how a lot of their root systems are, and they survive okay. So although they don't look good, those roots, they're not nice white shiny ones with green tips, or red tips some of them, and purple tips some of them. They're still okay. So that's how that one's surviving at the moment. It is just about hydrating through that old root mass. This one's not as happy. I'm not sure this side's going to grow. It's two pieces. But this side has a new shoot here and one here that's now rooting. And there's another new growth around the back. So this piece here has got 3 new growths. And as you can see, when they get to a certain size, they start to root. So that piece will recover nicely. That piece might. We'll wait and see. But the new growths, you know, you can see that the roots don't start immediately. They wait till the growth itself has a bit of size to it, and then the roots push out. So that's going to have a lot of new root growth very soon, that one. And then this is one of my older ones as well. This one's got a suntan. When they get that purple, that's a little bit over the top. But you have to bear in mind it's not going to last much longer. The days are now getting shorter. We're not going to notice it for 5-6 weeks, but they are. Plants will notice. So this one's got new growth here, another new growth there, and it's now pushing out some new roots. So that will pick up. That's one of my older ones again. That will do okay. Right, so that's the good ones, and then the last one up here is borderline dead. Oh. That's not exactly a pretty Tulumnia, is it? But that's green. And at the base of that green here is a white root. So the plant is not happy. It's far from happy, but it depends what that new growth can do. If it can get some roots down and get going and then start another new growth on top of it, it might recover. I don't hold out a lot of hope though. But at least the new growth is growing at a reasonable time of year. You know, it's got the longer days and the brighter light to actually push it on. Right, so that's everything cleared from up there. And then in this session, I then go round the stuff that's not behind me. It's a strange description. One of which is my little mounted phalaenopsis. This has suddenly started to grow quite well. It's pushed out quite a lot of root growth. It's still got new roots coming, and a lot of the older roots pushed out, so they look like that. Yeah, so they've got the older part of the root with the new bit on the end. So this has sort of come back into growth. It needs to come into bloom, quite honestly, but it'll probably do that in the autumn, you know, when the nights start getting cooler. But it's adapted to being on a mount. On occasions I throw it in the Vander bucket and give the whole plant a good soak, because obviously you know, nutrients and things can go in through the leaves as well as through the roots, and giving it a soak means the roots really do get absolutely wet right through, full up to the brim. And then the only other Tulumnia over here is down over there, simply because it's in bloom at the moment. So I just got a dodgy leaf there I want to break off. Right, so this is the only one in bloom at the moment. Mocha Dot, very attractive. That's blooming on an immature growth basically. But again, this one has good roots, new one's still forming, and it's now bloomed. So that's coming on. To say if when mounts come into bloom, I try and put them in a place where I can at least see them, even though that might not be the right conditions for them, because where this is living at the moment, it's not getting anywhere near enough light. But it's not exactly doing a lot of growing. It's here to show the blooms. And then coming around here, this will get looked at in great detail on Tuesday, because we have a care collab for Dendrobium senile. Now you saw me rip mine apart and take it off its mount, because the mount had rotted under the moss, which I didn't know about till I got the moss off. And obviously that, I thought that was going to take the plant down and I was going to lose it. But it's growing. It doesn't look good. I mean, when my daughter came down, she walked in and she pointed, she went, "What's happened to that?" Because again, it's one of her favourites. But it's growing, yeah? The new growths are pushing and they are growing roots. So it's going to recover, it just doesn't look too elegant at the moment. But it's coming on. And at least now those roots can get into some nice fresh live moss, whereas if it had been left, it would have gone into stale moss that was basically gone. You know, it was starting to get niffy. And then underneath that moss was rotting, you know, cork bark basically, which is a rare thing. You don't see that very often. And then that's my Comet King that's just going over. So that'll be gone soon. Nice new growth coming on, and a good root system front and back. So that's coming on nicely now. No reason why that latest growth that's just started shouldn't bloom. It should bloom okay. And the plant should now start getting some size to it, because Comet King is quite a large nobly type, and this one isn't. And it started off as a kiki that, well, it just wouldn't grow. Well, at least it's growing now. And it's bloomed on this cane a while back, now it's bloomed on this one. I suspect we will get some more blooms on that cane next year at the appropriate time, as well as on this one. So that's coming on. And the only other thing in this session is my Lodigessii. Lots of little kikis mounted flat. So I don't do that. This one stays flat like this. Now several of them are pushing up some nice canes, and several aren't. But they've still got some. Oh, I was just going to say this bit down here is dead, but yeah, just to make me out a liar, there's a new growth coming. So these are sort of growing. The mother plant, did I lose that? No, that went to somebody else. I decided to try and grow on the kikis and effectively start again, if you see what I mean. Which is sort of working. You know, there's a couple of years off blooming now. We need to get some strength into these. Well, these canes need to grow on this year, and then next year it needs to push up some full-sized canes. And then the following year we may get some blooms, we shall see. So that's that. Right, how long have we been running? Let's have a look up here. 31 minutes. Have I got time? Oh, I reckon I could. You lot like the long videos, don't you? So I'll break the camera off now, because this lot now needs to drip. And then I'll come back out after I've put all these away, and we'll carry on watering the rest, because I think last time I did the mounts we stopped there, so you didn't get to see the rest of them. So we'll do that today. I'll be back. Okay, back again. All that lot's been put away. Drop more water. That is the bulk of the mounts, quite honestly. Most of what's left is relatively big stuff, and the first thing we have to do is get these two giants out of the way, otherwise I can't get at the others. Now my Hercoglossum is almost over now. I'm just having a look to see if I can see any unopened buds. I don't think so. So this is its last flush now, but nonetheless, you know, there's still some good flushes of blooms on this. So I can get in a bit closer. Yeah. I have to watch what I'm doing with the big stuff, because it knocks pots over if you get too close. So, you know, this has been in bloom a nice long time this year. A staggered blooming with a mass blooming effectively in the middle of that period. So the way it opened this year, we got some blooms opened early, just a few, and then the rest started piling on, and then the bulk of them sort of dropped, and the last few buds opened, which is where we are now. So we probably only got a week, maybe a little bit longer, and then that will be gone. And the Friedrichianum, just noticed a couple of blooms going. So it started, and there's a lot of Dendrobiums don't last long. I mean, some of them really are only days. I haven't got any of those, but yeah, the Friedrichianum, it's still looking okay. You know, I mean, that's still got a lot of blooms on it. I've just taken 3 off, and the rest of them, oh, it's going to rain now. The rest of them look okay. That's typical, because I watered the bonsai and the stuff outside today. Now it rains. Yeah, great. But that amount of rain is not enough to do any good. You know, you need, when it's this time of year with the warmer weather, sunshine, long days, you need steady rain for 2 or 3 days to do any real good. Which, when people are on holiday and that, it's not ideal, is it? But, anyway, this has got, it's coming into growth. There are new growths. Some down the base here. This one's pushing on. There's some more around this side too. So that's coming into growth, which is good. Late in the year, but that's how that one grows. Right, then we start up here next, and the first one up there is a Miltonia. That's Castanier. It's got 2 new growths on it. One should bloom, if not the other one. Problem is, it was one of those that grew away from the mount in 2 directions, so it had to be split off, and one half went to somebody else and I kept one half. So it's effectively regenerating its root system. So these 2 new growths might not even bloom, but that's Miltonia Castanier, which is a a natural hybrid, so two species. It's Reginellii and Cloesii. So, and it does occur in the wild. Right, this is my sad, never to be replaced, so it needs to recover, which it is now doing. It's making a reasonable effort. Two new growths on this have aborted. I thought I'd lost it. But this is Oncidium varicosum rogersii. It's a variety balding. So I really would like this to recover. I love the blooms on it. And there's a story, if you've been around the channel long enough you'll know the story, but that was hard work buying that because the guy didn't want to sell it. He had to be bullied. And others around had to be bullied to get it. One of my birthday presents in the Swerter order, coming on quite nicely. Sophronitis, or Cattleya. Brevipedunculata, he says easily. Yes, I have been practicing. I don't know why some orchids just never sink in. No matter how long I own them, I have to end up looking at the tag every single time. And this one's growing nicely. I mean, some nice new growths pushing on. I don't know whether it's blooming size or not. This area up here is where my compact Cattleyas live. This is, what is this? This is little lemon drops crossed with Catletonia why not. We have an attempted new growth there that was after it came out of its pot and went on the mount, which it didn't like. And then we've got another one pushing on underneath and another one up the back. So this one is, and we've got new roots. So this one is recovering quite nicely. One of the ones that got its root system decked due to the scale treatment. Well, basically I did it wrong. Not the treatment that was wrong, it was Roger got it wrong. But I still wouldn't do it again. And this one is, it's an SLC Seagull's Raindrop crossed with Catletonia why not? Yeah. Anyway, this one's got a nice new growth coming, and I think this was one of the Schwerter ones as well, and a very good root system that's developed. So happy with the progress on that one. It's doing okay. Doing okay. I mean, I always sort of think, you know, if you've got a Cattleya that's pushing out a good root system and a new growth, it's going to do okay. And then as it gets bigger and stronger, who knows? Next time round there might be two new growths instead of one. Drop more water. Now this, I was just going to say, I think has lost its new growth. I think I'm going to lose the plant. That's gone. It's rotted. It's difficult to say what sort of rot. Looks soggy to me. But this plant just will not grow. Really, really bad scale. This didn't get the treatment because it was on a mount. I just kept struggling with it. And the first sign of a real problem was these two new growths here rotted and had to be cut off. And I thought I'd saved the plant. But now this new growth has rotted too. So I'm going to keep this. These pseudobulbs are not totally desiccated. I don't like the black markings on them. But it was growing on from a seedling, effectively. So I think what I'm going to do with this is keep the base of the plant totally dry. So even though it's a mount, I'm going to water it carefully around the edges so that some of the roots get hydrated, but the base of the plant stays totally dry and never sees any water. Let's just see if that will sort it out. I've got a feeling I'm going to lose it, which is a shame. This is a popular one. This is Cattleya Little Lemon Drops crossed with Encyclia vitulina. Lovely blooms and a nice colour changer, but it might not be long for this world. We shall see. Right, let me get up over this side. This is Epicattleya Volcano Trick variety Orange Fire. And this one's pushing on nicely. There's an older leaf going over here. It is an old leaf too. It's the oldest pseudobulb, the farthest one back. It had a growth with a sheath on that hasn't bloomed. I didn't think it would. There's a little piece of plant up the back here. In fact, that can come off now because it's not going to grow. It just makes the plant look untidy. So we'll get rid of it. Chuck a bit of moss back in. Right, so now what we've got is a plant that's pushing on with a nice strong new growth that's producing a root system. So this should grow on nicely now. That was one in the Schwerter order, I believe, and that would be one that I chose rather than the 4 that hitched a ride for my birthday, which was nice. So that's that one. This was one of Jeff's, Brassivola type. It's got no tag on it, so we'll call it a Brassivola type because, well, you can just tell by the look of it, can't you? But this sat here and did nothing for some time, and now it's bursting into life. We've got new growths coming out all over the place. So whereas I didn't think this was going to make it, it should now do okay. We shall see. It's got some root growth on it, not a lot, the size of the plant, but it's got some. And obviously those new growths should produce even more. So I think, I think that one will get going. A lot of the old yellowed leaves are on the oldest part of the plant, and without roots they have a job to stay green. Now this is an Epidendrum Lenipes, I think it is, and it's going mad. Compared with what it did last year, which was grow a nice big cane, and what it's doing this year is growing 1, 2, 3 new canes. I thought there was 4. Oh yeah, there's this little one at the front that I don't think is going to mature properly. So we've got more new canes this year, but I'm surprised that this big fat cane on it hasn't bloomed. But then I don't know enough about it to know when it would bloom. If it blooms on maturing canes or whether those canes have to age first, I don't know. But it's growing well, it's pushed out a load of roots, it's doing okay. Pleased with that. It would be nice to see some blooms on it one day because it hasn't bloomed yet. Maybe soon. Maybe soon. Oh. Right, so this is my Cattleya Cernua that has still not come into growth. It has a very, very long rest, this one does. But although it's not growing, it has just started its root growth, so the growths will come soon. But that one blooms around Christmas time, sort of during December anyway. And what are we in now? July? And it's still done nothing. But soon the new growths will start. And they'll push on and then bloom late in the year again. Oof. Now this one also has a hell of a rest. This is a Laelia something or other, I've forgotten. And this is just coming back into growth. It has a single, no it doesn't, that's it, make me a liar, it's got another one down there. So this is just coming back into growth. And this one comes into growth after it starts its root growth. So again, you see the roots coming and you think the growths are coming soon. So far we've got 2 on there. You need more than that. Come on, get your act together here. But they did come out staggered last year. So we shall see what we get anyway. But it's got good roots, happy on its mount. It's a pity the blooms don't last longer on that. It's a very attractive plant, but blooms don't last long. It's also a heavy mount, I have to go careful where I hang that. Right, next we've got Lindleyi. And this, I love it when something does what I wanted it to do. I did say that the growth on this went that way last year, so these are my new growths here on the end. And I thought, well, that's where the new growth's going to continue. It would be nice if one went the other way. Well, blow me, got a nice big new growth up this end of the plant, heading that way. Good. And one heading downwards. So we've got 2, oh, and one heading up the back, this one. So at the moment I've got 3 strong new growths pushing out, and at the base of those there is some new root growth, because the root system on here looks a bit tired. Well, basically it's last year's. So we're off with this one, new growth starting now. In theory we should get a reasonable blooming next year on that, because it'll bloom on the canes that I grew last year, rather than these that are just starting now. So that should do okay. Next is Jenkins CI. I'm getting a little worried about this because it doesn't seem to be producing lots of new growths. There's an odd 1 or 2. That's not a lot. I mean, this is pieces, it's not one plant. But it doesn't seem to be getting going this year. Maybe its blooming took a bit of steam out of it, because it did have a mass blooming. Anyway, maybe it will come back into growth in a while. It's not doing it at the moment. As I said, it's had a couple, and there's still a couple showing, but it's not what I would call bursting into growth. Not at the moment, anyway. Right, all that's left now is the long stuff. Oh. Now this is the one that Lynn dumped in my basket when she came to Burnham's with me, which I'd never heard of. She just came up with the plant in a pot and said, "You need that." So I got it. But it's just coming into growth. It's Dendrobium it's MOH and then Lianum. I don't know how you pronounce the MOH bit. It's probably, the H is probably silent, so Molianum. But it has gorgeous flowers. But we have a new cane and there is some root activity in there, so it's coming on. And the cane it had on it is still growing, still producing new leaves. So coming on. So that's that one. Go up there. Right, a bit more water. 2 left. I mean, there's still some. The Vandas have still got to go in the bucket, but do that in a minute. Right, now this one is interesting because it's growing all wrong. Now this is it Primulinum or no? It's a phyllum. Come on, Primulinum went to somebody else, didn't it? So this is a phyllum, and down here we have a kiki. 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 Now all that says to me is that I've got 4 new plants to put on that mount to grow on and make this plant look absolutely enormous. However, the plant itself is growing a nice big new cane. So all of these kikis soon, very soon, are going to come off and become part of the main plant up there. They'll all get strapped on with some new moss. But in the meantime, I always try and acclimatize kikis to getting wet. So I actually water them. I actually pour water all over these, what are aerial roots, on every single kiki, and hydrate them properly on the grounds that they will take much better when they come off the plant if they're used to getting some hydration. If you don't do that, there is a risk that the roots will keel over because of the change of environment, because you're switching them from aerial, to non-aerial, and some roots really object to that. They don't like it at all. If you've got a plant mounted with loads of aerial roots and you put it in a pot, you'll often lose those roots. So I always try and acclimatise them before I rip them off. And then up here we have a bit of good news on my Dendrobium nester. Oh, because this has been growing 1 cane each year for a while now, getting a bit fed up with that. But we have a kiki. Now the fact that these long cane ones are pushing kikis implies to me that perhaps they were a little bit warm in the winter. Anyway, I have a kiki on my nester, which will go back up and make a plant, which I now need to water. And the good news up here is we have a nice strong cane growing, but we got another one. We've actually got 2 canes coming from the base this year. Whoa! Because the blooms on this are not only spectacular colour wise, their fragrance is absolutely stunning. It's sort of like squashed fresh raspberries. Or like when you just start making the raspberry jam, but heavily on the raspberry fragrance. It's very, very strong. And the whole cane is covered in blooms. Well, how much nicer is that going to be if it's 3 or 4 canes covered in blooms? So come on! But we have a second one pushing on behind. But given how late in the year it is not going to reach full size, I don't expect. So, but at least it's there. If it only grows half size, it'll have half the number of blooms. That's better than none. Oh, I was just going to say, what's that noise? It's dripping. It's dripping on the polythene bag that's enclosing my encyclia. Sorry, psychopsis. I'll get there in a minute. Right, so that's it for today. That's all of my mounts. You've seen all of my mounted orchids today, every single one, without fail. Yep, every single one. I don't think I've ever done that in a single video before, albeit it's going to be a flipping long one. Never mind. Anyway, I'll say I've got a care collab on Tuesday, and apart from that, because they were like 37 buses, if you don't understand that, tough. But basically they all seem to come at once, all sort of squashed up together, which is not really what I wanted when I joined in. I wanted them a bit more spread out so that it doesn't look like that's all I do, if you see what I mean. I'd rather it look like I do one now and again. Anyway, that's the rush over. We got Senilli on Tuesday, and then the next one is Miltoniopsis, and that's well towards the end of the month, so there'll be a nice gap there. And of course, it'll be everything in bloom on the 8th, with any luck. And for all those in the States, happy Thanksgiving. I don't know what the hell that is, but whatever it is, enjoy it. I'm sure food will be eaten, bevies will be drunk, heads will be bad tomorrow. It's not something we celebrate in Europe. It's not a European thing, or any other part of the world, I don't think does it. It's an American thing, North American thing. And I believe it's done with gusto. I've got a feeling it's turkeys, isn't it? That just don't ring right for me. In this country, people only really have turkey at Christmas. And then not everyone, I mean, I can't stand turkey, I don't like it at all. I find it very dry. Compared with a nice juicy chicken, I find it a dry, sort of bland. I can't leave that bit in. I don't think that's ever happened before. I didn't see the warnings. The battery just died mid-sentence. Anyway, I've just put another battery in basically to say thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Long Sunday chat as normal. And an unusual one. For me to film every single mount. Okay, some of them got a couple of seconds, but we did every one. That's quite something for me to do them all in one go. And obviously as things change, spikes start or stuff like that. And we're one less than we were when we started. I'm fed up with looking at that thing. I would love to replace it though. It's gorgeous Dendrobium, but you know, it went down, reason unknown, never recovered, and that piece that I've just got rid of was in fact the last sign of life, which was a kiki, and it just would not grow. And it's been like that years. It just sits there doing nothing. So I think it's dead. I just haven't accepted it, which I have now. It's gone. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.